Hey, what's going on, you guys? Jamie here. Decided it was time to drop in and talk a little bit about my time with the OMD E-M1 MkII. I've had quite a bit of time with it, actually. Kind of late to getting out some sort of an informal review on this camera. I was handed the camera, or shipped the camera, sometime in October, probably around the middle of October, and that was it was a pre-production version of the camera. And I was shipped that camera with the instructions to try to obtain some action sports photography shots with it. So the time that I did have it initially, I was pretty much 100% focused on delivering some high-speed action shots. And the purpose of that was to kind of focus on, well, the focus abilities of this camera, the continuous autofocus and the continuous autofocus tracking. Also the high frame rate at which you can shoot, you know, that 60 frames per second in silent shutter. So, you know, my initial time with it, like I said, I was super focused on, like, I had a one-track mind. I was just pretty much only going after these shots. You know, I did get a little bit of, like, landscape work in with the camera, but didn't really work with the files a whole lot. So I'll talk about that initial time with the camera where, you know, again, it was all about the speed. So right out of the box, well, hell, there wasn't even a box when I got it. It was literally, there was no packaging for this camera yet. So I was sent it, you know, all wrapped up in bubble wrap, and it came with a battery and a charger. And so right out of the box, you know, I get the camera, or the camera out of the bubble wrap and grab it, and the first thing that I thought was, man, this has some, like, beef to it. Just the grip, the depth of which this grip has been increased it's not a night and day difference between the E-M1 MkI and the MkII, but it is enough of a difference to where it was the first thing that stood out to me. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but my dog is downstairs barking at something. We got a new puppy, so maybe he's barking at her. But anyways, off topic there. So, you know, like I said, first impressions were, you know, this feels like a completely different camera now. And actually, on the back of the camera, the recess where your thumb would rest has been changed as well. So between those two things, they're not massive things, but they're enough to where I felt like I was holding a new camera. And that kind of leads me into the next thing that I wanted to talk about. There are enough feature changes in this camera to where I almost feel like they shouldn't have called it an E-M1 MkII. It's almost like they could have called it like an E-M3, or I don't know, something like another denomination, another, you know, name for this, because there's enough here that is different and new that it almost could just be given a new camera name. That's my opinion on it. You know, I mean, there are some people who would argue that, I suppose. So, like I said, my first time with the camera, it was all about sports, and performance of this thing shooting sports was just ridiculous. It helped that I was shooting sports that I'm familiar with. I was shooting a professional skateboarder. I skated for like almost 20 years of my life, so I know the sport. I know what to look for. I know where to be and what shots to get. So going into it with that mindset, I was already an advantage, I guess, over somebody else maybe shooting it. But couple my experience with that sport with now the new abilities in this camera, and it was like, man, I felt like I could just go shoot for a magazine and just nail shots left and right with it. You know, one of the things that really stood out initially was the continuous autofocus tracking. So I was at a skate park, and this guy was skating, and he started off in the distance, you know, and he's coming towards me, like kind of like on an angle, and I had it on continuous autofocus tracking, you know, and you get that little target box on your subject, and it just stayed right on him the whole way, you know. I mean, I was panning along with him, and the box just tracked him, and I have the shutter depressed the entire time, not thinking, okay, this is the first time with the camera, not thinking about how many frames I was shooting. This was broad daylight, sunny day in October, middle of the day, and I had it on electronic shutter and the high speed, or the high, you know, the high frame rate electronic shutter. The main reason being that I was on the electronic shutters because I wanted to shoot wide open at the time. I think the shot I was doing was with the 75 1.8, because I wanted to be able to crush that background, get that shallow depth of field look. So I wanted to shoot it wide open, but f1.8 in the middle of the day, I needed a fast shutter speed, hence the electronic shutter. Again, having not messed with the settings in the camera at all and just leaving it at the default electronic shutter, high-speed sequential shooting, 60 frames a second. So the very first image sequence that I shot of this guy, he's probably about 100 feet off in the distance, 110 feet, and he's pushing off, getting as much speed as he can to get towards this ramp, and I've just got the shutter down the whole time. Just, you don't hear a click, you don't know how many frames you're shooting, you just know you're shooting. So I'm following him, I'm shooting, he goes off the ramp, he lands, I let go of the shutter. I had a slow card in at the time, not realizing what I'm doing here. I'm shooting raw only, and so I see it buffering. I'm like, oh man, all right. And I'm talking to the dude, he's like, yeah, so what did it look like? I'm like, hold on, it's right into the card right now, hold on, Talking, and I look, it's still buffering. I'm like, holy crap. Now again, keep in mind I had a slower card, and so that was my fault on that part. And then after a few seconds, about 10 seconds of buffering, it cleared. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, I literally just shot almost 300 photos of you. And at that time, I didn't know that the playback is more improved. So as you hit play, then you hit the little arrow tab, it played back like a movie. It was super cool to watch. I'm like, holy crap, this is just ridiculous. And the dude was like blown away. He's like, man, those last 10 shots were awesome. That's really what I want. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. The whole sequence leading up to it is totally useless. So it was pretty sweet. First impression is totally blown away that just over the course of a couple of seconds I could fire off almost 300 shots. But the sick thing is from frame 1 to like frame 200 and whatever the hell I was at, they were all in focus, just like spot on. From frame 1 all the way to the last frame, 280 something or 290. Every single shot that I had taken the time to skim through was like spot on. Never lost focus the entire time. It's pretty sick. So those were initial first impressions, focusing on like a single type of photography. Since then, though, we went through the rest of the month of October. I had to return the camera after shooting the skaters and had it shipped back to me again. They wanted a different style or a different, subject, I guess, to show the abilities of this camera. So one of the next things that I shot, one of the next subjects was a guy riding a motorcycle on a country road. And to shoot that, I was sitting in the back of a pickup truck. I know, safety first, right? So I was sitting in the back of a pickup truck and shooting him as he's riding his motorcycle behind the truck. We're doing 35 to 50 miles an hour. It varied, depending on the stretch of road we were on and curves and stuff like that. But imagine riding in the bed of a pickup truck, shooting somebody on a motorcycle, what kind of image stabilization you need to be able to get good shots. Hammered it. The image stabilization in this camera is just ridiculous. It's good. It is great in all the other Olympus cameras. This one, the notch has been upped a bit more. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, at that point in time, I was shooting with the 12 to 100. So I have the extra image stabilization in the lens that works in conjunction with the camera. So we're talking like 6.5 stops of stabilization, so my slower shutter speed is now actually compensated to a much faster speed. So what this allowed me to do was actually shoot at a slower shutter speed so I could get the background blurred as we're traveling down the road, but still stable enough to where any of this movement was compensated for. It's stuff like this, that opens the doors for new shooting possibilities, that most people probably would never even think are possible for themselves without special equipment. Well, I guess this is special equipment. You got to invest in an E-M1 MkII to get some of this stuff. Next thing to talk about is Pro Capture, and I've had a lot of questions asking me like, what exactly is it? Like, what is it doing? Like, how does it work? What can I expect from it? My first real time spent working with Pro Capture was in New York City for the launch event of this camera, where Mike Baining and I, along with fellow member of the Visionary program, and Day, were all stationed at this booth during the launch event for this camera. And there were booths set up that had different focuses, and ours was with this bartender. If you've ever seen Cocktail, the movie with Tom Cruise, you know, where they're flipping bottles and shakers and glasses around, that's what this guy did. So this was the first time I really sat down and worked with ProCapture to get the most out of it. And the way it works is you do half shutter press to focus on your subject, and as soon as you have shutter press and you're getting your focus lock, it starts recording frames, and it's just filing them away in this almost endless buffer that this camera has. And then when you finish depressing the shutter button and you actually take that photo, you get the photo that you just took by pressing the shutter all the way down, but then up to 14 images that happened just prior to that shutter depress. It's sick. And if you do the shutter press all the way down and then hold it, it continues to capture more frames even beyond that shutter press. So we were able to get, you know, the shots of this guy doing tricks with the shakers and the bottles, you know. So if you wanted to get those shots where he was flipping the bottle and it was completely upside down right above him, it was a piece of cake to do. It was like super easy. It was just hold down the shutter button just as he starts to flip it up. And when you think you got it, hit the shutter button. Don't worry, because you probably got it even if you didn't get it yourself. So it's pretty rad. And, you know, Mike and I went also to, we did some exploring in New York. Of course, when you're in the city, you're going to have to explore. So we were over near the Flatiron Building, checking out one of the parks over there, and I cannot remember the name of the park for the life of me. But they have a dog park there, and there was a gentleman throwing a Frisbee for the dogs. And again, it was so easy to get that moment where the dog's teeth just grab onto the Frisbee midair. You know, it was a piece of cake. You don't have to be perfect in your timing. You just have to be close, and the camera captures, you know, that's those milliseconds before your finger can do it. So I'm actually looking forward to trying it out when we get back into storm season to see if I can actually hand shoot lightning photos rather than do like live composite or long exposures to do it, you know. Just a little challenge I'm issuing to myself. Over the winter, though, I'm going to try and use ProCapture to capture some really cool looking water droplets, the splash photography, which, again, not the easiest thing to do just with your finger. I've had a lot of misses and very few hits doing it that way. So I'm thinking that ProCapture will allow me to pull that off. We'll see, though. Who knows? What else can I talk about this camera? The menu system has been completely revamped. I've been getting a lot of mixed feedback on that. Some people don't really care for, they say it's too monochromatic. I think once you've been using it for a little while, you kind of understand the move in that direction. I think the high contrast menu look, it just makes reading it easier in my mind. So the menu system, again, you know, the monochromatic look, just because it's a high contrast look, I think it's easier to work with. I guess somebody's always going to have something to complain about, right? Something else that fellow trailblazer Alex McClure pointed out the other day, and I don't even know, he must have been doing like we've all been doing lately, and that's just digging through the menus to see what all is in here, because we're finding stuff that we don't even know what it is still. But one of the things that Alex found, which is totally cool, is Alex found in the menu system that if you like to shoot with the grid pattern, you know, because there are several grids that you can have on your camera, Alex found that you can change the color of that grid. You can see mine is like this fuchsia purple color. And I know some people are going to say, oh, well, who cares? Like, why would I want to change the color of that? Well, okay, so perfect example is the other day outside shooting. I was shooting against the sky, and I wanted to frame in part of this, like a smokestack, you know, and I was using that kind of like the rule of thirds frame there. And I think having that purple fuchsia kind of color that I had put on there just like on a whim, it actually stood out against the sky really good. So I think depending on your settings, your scenery, maybe changing that color might be something that you could use. I don't know, there are probably some studio settings, again, shooting product photography against certain color backdrops where having that grid in a different color might be kind of useful. And if anything else, you know, it's something you can customize. I'm all about being able to customize stuff, so that's super cool in my mind. So big shout out to Alex for finding that. Dude, that was super cool. When you first told us, I was like, what? And then I started fiddling around with it, and I'm like, okay, that's actually kind of cool. And I guess I'll leave this video. So far, this has just kind of been like my emotional connection to the camera video. But I'll leave talking about the thing that seems to be on everybody's mind, and that's the price. There's been a lot of feedback, not necessarily positive, from a lot of people on the price point. The fact that it is a $2,000 camera now, you know, it's significantly higher than the E-M1 MkI currently is, which it's to be expected, you know. I mean, we're a couple years into the life cycle of the E-M1 MkI. Naturally, the price is going to be dropping significantly this far into the game. And when a new camera comes out, it's always going to be more money. But this is not, in my opinion, this is not just an incremental step forward. That's why the Mark II moniker I know what they're doing with it, I get it, but it's so much more than a Mark II. It's almost like, damn, we could have just skipped the Mark II and just said, okay, this is the Mark III. All right, so I'm going to wrap the video up talking about the one issue that I see a lot of people talking about that's not a positive issue about this camera, and that is the price point. The fact that this camera is $2,000, almost $2,000, seems to be not sitting well with a lot of people, and I just want to address that, you know, my personal take on that. This is a professional level camera. I would not expect a pro level camera to be the cheapest in the lineup. I will definitely stand by my word that you are getting what you pay for at that $2,000 price point. You're getting features found in no other camera. You're getting definitely a rugged, beefy, solid, well-built camera that, again, I mean, I think the feature set with this camera matches the price point. I don't know any other camera on the market where somebody can go out there and do a 15-second handheld shot at night and get a good usable image. If you can think of a camera company that's making something like that, send it my way. I want to check it out, because I'm telling you what, nobody's doing it. And Chris Gampett of the Photographer did exactly that at the launch event for this camera. 15 seconds handheld. I got 4.5 seconds, just with crappy form, not even, you know, being as like hardcore into trying to get the longest possible shot as he was. 4.5 seconds. Totally smooth, clean, crisp lined handheld shot. Nobody's doing that. So I think for $2,000, you're definitely getting your money's worth. Weather sealed, feature set no one else has got. It's a robust camera. The battery life on this is phenomenal now. It's such a great amount of shooting time afforded you by a single battery. If you throw the optional battery grip on it, well, you're doubling that life. So I mean, you really can't go wrong with this camera. Yes, it's expensive, but it's not expensive when you compare it to other pro level cameras out there. It's really not. And I think that a lot of the people that are upset by it are people who really want the camera, and I don't blame them. Who wouldn't want it? But they're not necessarily like a working pro. They're just like a super enthusiastic shooter, a passionate photographer. And because that price is high, it hurts. And I get that, you know. Give it time, it will come down. Prices always come down. So just bide your time until then, you know, or save those pennies until you can get it. And trust me, you won't regret it when you do get it, and you'll understand where that price point came from. So I guess that's it, you guys. You know, I don't know if you learned anything from this or not. I can just tell you that the images that I'm about to share with you all shot with this camera. There will be a couple image sequences in here so you can see that the continuous autofocus tracking is just spot on. I'll show you probably like the first, middle, and last shots in a sequence, you know, and try to give you a little bit of background on those, maybe like in an overlay or something, so you know what you're looking at. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. Thanks for understanding why I haven't posted anything online in a while. It's just been a really busy past couple of months, but the winter's here and it's my wind down season, so maybe I'll start doing some more videos for you guys. I'll talk to you later, and thanks for watching.